So if we think about nuclear power in the Netherlands or in Europe, we think about these very big power plants that always have cost overruns and time overruns. What a lot of people don't know is that actually that particular design, the EPR of EDF, way before the first nuclear power plant in Europe was already in function. There was already one based on that design in China, the Taishan #1 nuclear power plant. And so China is really a lot further in the whole nuclear power and in the whole energy transition sector than we know, of course, about the solar panels and the wind turbines, but also nuclear power. China is really leading. So I'm going to tell you something about that. So first, about China's energy transition in general. Then nuclear power in short, because I suppose that most of the people watching are not physicists or nuclear experts, very shortly. Then China's ambition in nuclear power, the current status of the nuclear fleet and the expansion plans, technological self-reliance and innovation, and then the challenges and future outlook. So, well, this, thank you for the introduction, Floris. Something about me, so both my passions, China and nuclear power. From the foundation, we are from the SEC Foundation, we are also organizing a conference on SMRs, the small modular reactors, in January next year here in The Hague. So first about China's energy consumption and emissions. So China is the largest emitter of greenhouse gases by far. As you can see on the right side, China accounts for more than 30% of global emissions. And you see on the left side that a big part of the emissions last year in 2004 came from coal. We all know that China has a lot of coal-fired power plants. They are really scaling up in nuclear, hydropower, wind, solar and biofuels and a little bit other renewables. But the majority is still the fossil fuels, gas, coal and oil. In total, in 2024, it was almost 50,000 terawatt hours of energy production in total, consumption in total. And to give you an idea, in the Netherlands, that's roughly 2,800 terawatt hours. The US, though, they have 90,000 terawatt hours of primary energy consumption. So in September 2020, during a UN meeting, Xi Jinping, he announced the roadmap to China's net zero strategy. So in short, what he said is that in 2060, China would be net zero, and in 2030, because he said, yeah, we're still a developing country, so give us a little bit time, our peak emission will be in 2030, and from there on, we will go down very quickly to zero in 2060. And so the goal to peak emissions was 2030. However, it seems that, of course, we still need to wait for if it's because of economic recession or other reasons, but it seems that the peak emission has already taken place in China. So actually they are 5 years ahead of schedule. 2 weeks ago, though, there was a talk. Xi Jinping announced that the reduction target would be 7 to 10% CO2 reduction in 2035, which is of course significant, but energy experts were a little bit disappointed about that number because in principle, in theory, China could go much faster. But still, they are still on the path to net zero in 2060. So a big part of this energy strategy is electrification. I think that everybody that has been in China in the past years has seen that there is enormous electrification going on in China. So the cars on the roads, the little motorcycles, high-speed trains, of course, a lot of industrial processes, everything is moving towards electrification. So how China does this is first by stimulating electric vehicles. So there's financial subsidies in place, there are tax breaks to EV companies, so to really stimulate the electric vehicle growth. And you really see at this moment actually there's a shakeout of EV companies because there is an enormous development has been going on. And well, we know that in Europe we are actually struggling also with the enormous amount of new and advanced electrical vehicles that are coming from China. Also, there have been high investments in high-speed train connections. So the fixed assets investments in railways were reaching $120 billion in 2024. And of course, the electricity grid is upgraded significantly. $800 billion investments by 2030 for upgrading China's hardware and software in the grid connections. So with electrification, a large part of the source of that electricity is going to come from nuclear power. So very shortly introduced so that we know what we're talking about. So on the right side, you see a turbine, so a power plant. You have the turbine, electric generation, and in a coal-fired power plant, you spin the turbine with steam. It's the same in a nuclear power plant, only the source of the power of the steam is from nuclear fission. So that's the splitting of atoms. So you have a neutron, it bombards a uranium atom, and that will have a chain reaction, which is contained usually by water. The traditional power plants, nuclear power plants, are water-cooled power plants. So the fission heat will boil the water, that generates steam, and the steam then spins a turbine, which creates electricity. So these water-cooled reactors are what we usually call generation 2 or 3 type of reactors, the big reactors. It's also the global standard at this moment. Most of the nuclear reactors in the world are water-cooled reactors. But there's also another, like a more advanced form of, there's different, at this moment, there are several types of new advanced reactors. They usually have a different coolant. So it can be, for example, a gas coolant, such as helium. You can have a liquid metal, such as lead, for example, or you can have a molten salt coolant. They operate at a much higher temperature, which offers a greater efficiency and enhanced safety, which is of course interesting. You have your passive cooling, which creates a safe environment. Not that the traditional water-cooled reactors are not safe, because in fact they are, but this is an even more like a passive safety system. And of course, there's nuclear fusion. That's really far in the future. That's you create actually the processes in the sun where you don't split the atoms, but you combine them. In all three of these type of reactors, China is really making a lot of progress. So based on the designs of EDF, of Westinghouse, of the Russians, the Rosatom reactors, they developed their own reactor type, which they called the Hualong 1 or the HPR 1000. So it's 1000 megawatt or 1 gigawatt. So it's their signature reactor. It's also the reactor that they export all over the world at this moment. I will come to that later. For the generation 4 reactors, the advanced reactors, they have the only high temperature gas cooled reactor worldwide is now operational in China, in Shandong, in Shidao. They had a demonstration reactor of 2 megawatts. But now this high temperature gas cooled reactor in Shidao is 200 megawatts, so that's really significant. It's operational and it's the first one worldwide. And then in nuclear fusion, they also have several facilities where they are making great progress, but that is still future music. So then about the current status of the nuclear fleet and the expansions. So at this moment, China has 57 nuclear power plants in operation. These are data from the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, which has a capacity of more than 55 gigawatt electric. There are 29 nuclear power plants at this moment under construction, with a total net capacity of almost 31 gigawatts. And because China has only been developing nuclear power plants of their own, they have 0 permanent shutdowns. And at this moment, so you were correct, Floriske, so almost 5% of the nuclear production, of the total electricity generation is produced by nuclear power. The nuclear share trend, they actually, so the goal is for 2030 to have, 2035 to have 10% of total electricity generation to have that by nuclear power. And in 2060, they want to have 18% of the total energy mix coming from electricity mix. No, the total energy mix actually. So for electricity, it's a much bigger number. Total energy mix, 18% should come from nuclear power. As I already touched upon a little bit, so the goal for 2035 is that nuclear power is expected to account for 10% of the total output. And it was 5% in 2021, so you think, it went down a little bit, and that's because of the enormous electrification. So the demand for electricity has risen a lot, which means that the total share of nuclear power has been shrinking a little bit, but indeed with all the upcoming 29 nuclear power plants that are under construction, so that means that the number will rise again. The plan was to have 70 gigawatts online this year. That goal has not really been reached because, as you just saw, it's 56 gigawatt roughly. But the development is going so fast, so I think that goal will be reached in maybe next year or the year after. So as you see, that the goal of China in a lot of sectors, but also the nuclear power industry, is technological self-reliance and innovation. The big cornerstone of the nuclear development, as I said before, is the Hualong 1 or the HPR 1000. At the same time, they are really developing their fourth generation reactors, a leadership in that field. As I just mentioned, the high temperature gas-cooled reactor at Sherda Bay is a nice example, but they are also making steps in molten salt reactor developments and lead-cooled reactors, not so much, but there's really a lot of development in the fourth generation reactors. There's also future innovation, the Hualong 2. So the Hualong 1 has already, there's already a development there, not so much in the core technology, but in the process of production. So they are really making this Hualong 1. The Hualong 2 is now faster, cheaper to produce, faster to produce. So the core design is the same, but the whole process around it makes it much more efficient. And then there's also future design SMRs. So they are also developing their own small modular reactors that are going to be used in, on islands or for industry facilities, etc. So I will also come to that a little bit later, why China has been so successful in this area. But first, what does this actually mean for us, for the rest of the world? Well, first of all, what we can really learn from China is their cost learning curve and the potential for a global price drop, as well as a lot of opponents of nuclear. They usually say, nuclear power is so expensive. And to build a new nuclear power plant, it's too expensive. We should only focus on wind and solar. But China proves that if you just stick to to series production and to really make good timelines for see it as projects that can be really replicated, there is a lot of potential for price drop. So the 10 nuclear power plants that China they announced, so apart from so within the 29, they announced I think a few months ago 10 new nuclear power plants building for 2.8 billion euro per gigawatt per plant, which is really, well, I think maybe it's way less than the, well, Hinkley Point C, they are now at 50 billion euros or so. It's really amazing what a difference in price that is. And then that also, of course, leads the way to the picture is a little bit unclear. I took that from the China nuclear power website. This was an old picture from 2020 where they presented the export plans of the Hualong 1 reactor worldwide. So you see at this moment they are actually building the power plant in Pakistan, two reactors, and there is also in Argentina there is a plan to build a Hualong 1 reactor there as well. And then there's a lot of talks with other countries, mostly in the global south and in Asia, about developing a Chinese nuclear reactor. Actually, what you see, for example, in Africa, because China, the policy of China is that they are not allowed anymore to export coal-fired power plants or knowledge about it. So if that is going to be replaced by nuclear, it's of course very good for the climate. And we will also probably see that the export dominance of Russia by Rosatom and the West, so EDF, Westinghouse, the Western players, probably that will decline a little bit in favor of the Chinese suppliers. On the other hand, it also offers opportunity for collaboration, for example, in the SMR development or in the fuel cycle. China is actually also developing their own fuel cycle. They want to close their own fuel cycle, which means that they have a little bit of uranium themselves, a little bit of mining, but mostly they want to really recycle, because it's possible to recycle your uranium from the spent fuel. And they are also heavily investing in 3 sites in China to also to prepare the spent fuel again for new nuclear production. So the success factors of China's nuclear strategy, maybe we can also learn from that. This sector is really heavily state-backed, which means that it's centralized state planning. There's a low interest financing because the financing is being done by state banks and state institutions. As we saw last month in the wind development sector, you see that there was a lot of competition among, so the strategy from the top was really to create competition to let the best, the same with EVs. There's the competition is created to select the best, the winner in the end. For nuclear, that's not the case, because of course it's much more sensitive. So it's really a much more centralized and state-backed program with state-owned enterprises, knowledge institutes, and state-owned operators as well, state banks. So the whole this whole system is really heavily centrally steered. And also they are really focusing on a national supply chain. They're installing a national supply chain to make the processes much more efficient. Also, there's a very clear going global strategy. So China is actively exporting its nuclear technology worldwide, as we just saw, particularly the Hualong 1. Which means that China is really becoming a major nuclear vendor next to Rosatom and the Western vendors. And as I just said before, the fuel cycle, there's also a policy to pursue a closed fuel cycle. So to round up, the conclusion of all this is that China is what we see, of course, in a lot of sectors. They are very good at scaling up and planning. So this planning enables, the good planning enables speed and scaling up. Innovation is very important, is crucial in the development, especially with the creation of these new type of reactors. It's really high-tech, high-tech power, and it's completely state-driven with universities and research institutes. So yeah, for us, the rest of the world, we are watching this technology, and hopefully we can also learn a little bit from this development. So that was my presentation.